Hey everyone, I wanted to go over some not so exciting news that we got regarding Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which is set to release on both the Nintendo Switch and on PC on June 30th. And as we are getting a ton of brand new information, as Capcom basically gave access to some journalists to be able to play the game and also some content creators in Japan as well, we got a ton of new gameplay to go over. I made a video about that just recently. We also got a little bit of sad news, I guess, for those people who were expecting Lagiacrus to be making a comeback into Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak in any way, shape, or form, since we haven't necessarily seen it since Generations Ultimate. Now, IGN, huge shout out to them for actually getting the questions asked regarding this. I put up just recently an article. Casey DeFreitas, huge shout out to her. I know she used to run the MVC podcast or something like that for IGN. Does very good work. She basically spoke with Ryoso Tsujimoto, the producer for the Monster Hunter franchise, and basically just flat out asked him if Lagiacrus is going to make an appearance into Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. So the article that they posted basically reads as follows. Monster Hunter producer Ryoso Tsujimoto has explained why fan favorite monster Lagiacrus won't be making a return in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Tsujimoto and Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak's director Yoshitake Suzuki spoke to IGN about the upcoming expansion and detailed why Lagiacrus was passed over even though the desire is definitely there. I think this is very important. In quotations, they basically say, unfortunately, Lagiacrus is a very technological ... difficult monster to implement. It's very snake-like. Its parts are kind of all touching the ground in different moments, Tsujimoto explained. And he continued, so it's a very writhing sort of ground-based monster. Then they also put up another little quote here as well. Tsujimoto continued to explain that the variety of terrain and its many inclines and drops in the most recent Monster Hunter games makes it especially difficult to implement monsters like Lagiacrus. Then they put in quotation marks, this is presumably coming from him. We'd like to look back on it on some time, but the technological difficulties, they are kind of daunting, lamented Tsujimoto. So basically they are saying, guys, that is not necessarily just the Nintendo Switch. They are kind of throwing Monster Hunter World under the bus as well, as they are saying the latest games. They didn't necessarily say just Rise, but they're also saying latest games. As in, remember, Generations Ultimate was the last of its type, the 3DS titles. Then they made World, Iceborne, that's PS4, Xbox, PC, and now Rise, Nintendo Switch, and PC. So it's not necessarily the Nintendo Switch's fault or the lack of power there. They're basically saying World was pretty much the same thing. Verticality seems to be the issue here. Not necessarily that they don't want to put Lagiacrus in the game, but the fact that the maps are so vertical, it's kind of a problem. They do actually make a couple of points that I did find interesting as well. They mentioned that one, neither Mitsuzune nor Allmother drag their bodies on the ground quite like Lagiacrus does. Some of Mitsuzune's chests may touch the floor and both possess special movements, but neither have as many contact points on the ground as Lagiacrus does during normal mode movements. 2, both Rise's Leviathans were created to battle it out with hunters on land, while Lagiacrus, on the other hand, was originally designed to fight fully submerged underground, a majority of the time to take full advantage of Monster Hunter Tri's unique underwater combat mechanic. It's clearly not an easy transition to make into new games. Now that does make some amount of sense. I would say that if the monster was specifically to be designed to be underwater combat heavy, kind of like Tigrex, I believe is how it's pronounced. Tigrex, I'm probably butchering the name. I apologize for that. I don't remember that monster all that much, other than the fact it was the other monster, except for Gabiel, I guess, that was water heavy, I guess, or water only. Tigrex is what I believe it was the actual name of it. So those are the only monsters that I could really think of. Gabiel, Tigrex, Lagi, and I guess Royal Ludroth might have fought in the water at some point in time. But again, they're saying that basically Lagi was all water all the time in the original idea, and that they basically brought it to land. Ultimately, though, I think they are the developers. I think they can certainly make this happen if they want. Let's just take Rathalos, for example. That is a monster that has been tweaked over and over and over again. I remember specifically when they spoke about in Monster Hunter 4 leading up to the release of it, how they had reworked some of his mechanics. Then back into Monster Hunter World when they made him more airborne heavy, a little bit more flying in the air like. They tweaked them a little bit in that regard. Rathian as well. So they have been tweaking monsters left and right pretty much since the dawn of time, since the dawn of the franchise. So for them to say that they can't necessarily get it to work on modern consoles, not even the limitations of the Switch or anything like that, I think it's a little bit of an excuse, but I understand it regardless. Now, I do think there is a couple of hidden tricks here that I do think they are saying. Like, first and foremost, they are saying straight up, we'd like to look back on it at some time, but the technological difficulties, quote unquote, are kind of daunting. I do find it fascinating, since we know Monster Hunter World 2 or Monster Hunter 6 or whatever you're going to end up calling the next game, we know there's going to be PS5, Xbox Series X, PC. There's going to be no excuse of technological difficulties to be able to run that monster essentially however it is that they want to redesign it. So I think the wording might be there where I wouldn't necessarily hold it against anyone now at this point in time here in June of 2022 to basically make the prediction that Laggy is going to be appearing in Monster Hunter 6, Monster Hunter World 2, because they're basically going to be in like current gen consoles, the more powerful consoles we've ever seen, and they're not going to be limited power wise. I mean, if they are saying that a PS5 cannot run Lagiacrus on the ground, I mean, what are we doing here? At that point in time, let's just pack it up and leave. You know what I mean? Like, at that point in time, we've done everything we needed to do. So I think that's not really going to hold up any water in the future. Rise was never really going to be the reason as to why they were going to put Lagiacrus in the game. This was something that I spoke about multiple times. That monster, and of course Magalos, were just two monsters that I just never actually saw making an appearance in a Rise and or Sunbreak before we even knew what Sunbreak was. So, I'm a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, I expected it, so I'm not really that upset. When they are saying technological difficulties, though, I think PS5, Series X is not really going to be an issue to hold them back. So, I guess they're really not going to have any issues going forward. Let's do remember as well that Kaname Fuyoka, one of the directors, I believe, for Monster Hunter World, originally has spoke regarding basically that the monster did have a lot of issues due to a snake-like body format, essentially kind of like Narajala. So they basically weren't going to be able to make those monsters work for Monster Hunter World. And that was I believe in an interview back for Monster Hunter World. So that's not recent at any time. Like, even in World, people were already asking them for Laggy and they couldn't necessarily make it work then. So, maybe for the next game they will, but for now we'll just have to keep waiting. But again, if you're expecting it to kind of make an experience in Sunbreak, seems like that's not going to be the case. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Of course, huge shout out to IGN for their pretty decently good article. Casey DeFried is the writer. Huge shout out to her as well. If you are brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.